Hi, everyone. Welcome to our series called Simply Multifamily. My name is Karen Dillon. I am a broker associate at KW Commercial, specializing in multifamily property sales. The purpose of this series is to highlight issues that affect owners of multifamily properties via market updates, investment insights, and interviews with trusted professionals. Today, we have the privilege of sitting down with Preston Howard, principal of Rose City Realty, where he originates, pre-underwrites, structures, defends, and funds the financing of office, retail, industrial, and multifamily real estate assets. We'll be speaking with Preston about hard money loans in the multifamily market. Welcome, Preston. It's great to have you.
Well, it's always good to be with you, Kieran. It's great to be with your audience here today. So let's ready to get into our discussion.
All right. So since we're talking about hard money loans, I thought it would make sense to start with what makes hard money lending unique in the multifamily property market, and how does it differ from the traditional lending options?
Well, that's a good question to start the discussion off right off the bat. So I always look at it as two handfuls that you can have. There's either best of the best or a need for speed. Usually with the best of the best, there's more time. There is more desire to get the lowest rate. So people are willing to give up more documentation, more of their time, more due diligence, more underwriting. With hard money, you're looking at, there's usually a need for speed component, and documentation isn't necessarily available, or they want to hold it close to the vest, or there may be something else that the borrower really doesn't want to disclose right now or ever.
Mm-hmm.
So usually the traditional commercial finance, they want everything.
Mm-hmm.
If I might suffice it to say, they might even want your firstborn child's first pint of blood.
Mm-hmm.
That's just where underwriting and due diligence is at, because banks, if you want to get the absolute best of the best financing, they want you to give up the most of the documentation. Hard money usually pulls back on that documentation requirement as much as possible, and as much as is reasonable, but usually the trade-off is they usually want a lower loan to value compared to the best of the best financing in the market. There's usually like a 10 to 15% leverage spread in between what hard money will give and how high traditional financing will push it.
Okay, that makes sense. So what's the typical process for a multifamily property owner to go through when applying for a hard money loan?
Some people would just say just a heartbeat, but normally we still want to know about credit, even though underlying everything is good old-fashioned underwriting: people, credit, and the real estate. In spite of the desire, some people have a desire to be a vulture. My clients and I do not. So we still want to work with good people. We still would like to work with people with good credit. In the end, we want to see that they have something to lose, but we also want to see that they have a good habit of paying their bills. And then the third thing is the real estate. Many in hard money would like to just focus on this one, which is just the real estate component. And that's why in hard money, they usually limit the leverage level to about 60, 65%, because they want to have that buffer in case something does go wrong. They have enough of a buffer, legal costs, maintenance costs, disposition costs, to make sure that there's still something left over in case things go bad and they go sideways. So I would say that for hard money, the most important things are making sure that the people are good, their credit is good with regards to history, and that the real estate. Underneath the real estate is a desire to make sure that the borrower, I said it before and I'll keep saying it, the borrower has something to lose. We might lend on homes, 5 parcels from the Pacific Ocean, lend on a 6-plex right around the corner from the Santa Monica 3rd Street Promenade. I mean, those are the best of the best. When I say something to lose, who wants to go 50% LTV on their apartments with all 2-bedroom units? That's foolhardy. So accordingly, you want to have that spread in there for the LTV. And if the real estate itself is well located or has a good purpose, usually a transaction can get done even in the toughest neighborhoods. If you got low LTV and tenants who are paying rent,
Mhm.
compared to what the debt servicing would be if there's a nice spread between the rents collected and the amount of operating expenses, including debt that need to be paid. There is a transaction to be had somewhere, anywhere, everywhere within the state and across the country.
Got it. And how long does that process usually take?
If a borrower and my team are in sync, everybody's communicating effectively, and we are literally talking, emailing, texting every day, a transaction, hard money can get done in 3 weeks or less.
Okay.
I've done transactions, for an example.
Mm.
Once again, something to lose. Client had a 2-bedroom condo on Ocean Boulevard in Santa Monica. Only owed 250,000. The condo's worth 800,000.
Mhm.
It's one block, literally, from the Pacific Ocean in Santa Monica.
Mhm.
That is something to lose.
Right.
And he was in foreclosure. The trustee sale was going to occur the next week.
Okay.
Once I presented the property, gave my investor the address, sent a couple photos, we were able to fund and still beat the clock at the courthouse steps.
Wow. Impressive. So it's the ball is kind of in the court of the borrower in terms of how on top of it they are to help move the process along.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're all human. We all have families of origin, our parents, brothers, cousins. We all have, many of us have families of creation, our children, our spouses. And needless to say, they create roadblocks, distractions, things that slow us down. I, I suffice it to say, I've been in the midst of a transaction, and lo and behold, the spouse died.
Mm.
That slowed things down. A child ran into trouble with the law.
Mhm.
Another child ran into trouble at school, and
Mhm.
it takes the borrower's eye off the transaction. And those things can slow us down. And we hope that everybody stays well and healthy and can communicate effectively, but things do happen. Case in point, I had a transaction. It was only going to be a 1-day financing. They only needed my financing to borrow money to pay beneficiaries in the name of the trust.
Okay.
Money was borrowed against the property,
Mhm.
an investment piece of multifamily. They borrowed against it. The mother, who was the original owner of the property, has passed away. It's still in her trust. So we need to borrow against the asset to pay out the different trustees, who are 3 different beneficiaries, 3 brothers. They're the 3 beneficiaries. They're all on title as successor trustees. They've come to an agreement. Nobody's fighting. And all we needed to do was put a loan of 1,400,000
Okay.
against a $2.1 million property. So that's 66% LTV. Give each brother 700,000, and everything should be fine. They only need to borrow the money for 1 day because one of the brothers is going to pay us off the next day to preserve the tax base, because one of them actually wants to move into the property.
Okay.
Lo and behold, 2 days before we're supposed to sign loan documents, one of my 3 trustees has a massive stroke.
Oh no.
So incapacitation, and amazingly so, his family of origin, his other 2 brothers, because they're so tight, did
Mhm.
not want to sign loan documents without him. They wanted to wait until that brother
Mhm.
got back on his feet because they believed that he deserved the right to sign the loan documents too. It was a whole family dynamic. This was mom's property, and now a brother's going to move in and he's going to live there. It was just, family dynamic can
Right.
definitely mess with a transaction. And this is one of those cases where it did. Eventually, they pulled out of the transaction and just preferred to sell the property because the brother's going to have to go. This particular brother wanted to move in, also was one that had this particular brother that wanted to move in is also the same brother that had the stroke. And
Oh.
accordingly, he's going to need care.
Mhm.
So probably his share of the estate he's gonna need care. So as opposed to having him move in, they're going to sell the property and use the proceeds to pay for his care.
That's fair. That makes sense.
Mhm.
So what are the key factors or criteria you consider when you're evaluating a multifamily property for a loan approval?
I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. They got to have something to lose. No matter where it's located, no matter what the property type, if they don't have something worth losing, they'll take a whatever type attitude about making payments. Um, you know, I've had clients with tough properties in tough neighborhoods in the county of Los Angeles. He owed 200,000. The property is worth 1 million and it's a cash cow.
Mhm.
Even in the toughest areas, that cash cow is something that he does not want to lose.
Right.
The property, 5 parcels from the ocean.
Mhm. Yeah.
They owed nothing. They only borrowed 100,000 and the property's worth 2 million. Definitely something to lose. So that's the first thing. Good payment history. And I go back to the original thing, people, credit, and real estate. Are the people good?
Yeah.
Do they have a credit history showing that they have a good history of making payments on time? And then is the real estate good? I mean, we can go through loan applications, we can collect, proofs of rental payments, we can get rent rolls, operating statements, but in the end, do we actually believe that the person who's supposed to cut the check every month is going to cut it and send it?
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So what types of properties are best suited for hard money loans? And are there any property types or conditions you typically avoid? So I understand like if it's a very coveted piece of real estate, that makes sense. But is there other criteria? Like a lot of the listeners might just have the average class B or C multifamily property kind of anywhere in the greater LA area. Are there other criteria that kind of make certain properties more well suited for hard money than some others?
Uh, First thing that I'll say, and as you, my real estate professional friend who is a former attorney, you can appreciate this. Title's got to be clean. Litigation. Everybody knows that the minute you see litigation, you might as well press stop, don't press go. If a property is in litigation, you pull that preliminary title report, you look, you see list pendants, you know nothing's going to happen for at least a month. You already know that. So avoiding litigation, eminent domain issues, environmental. Um, there's nothing like getting all excited about a transaction only to find out that there's an environmental issue. Occupancy. In this state particularly, we're a very litigious state, and in another form of litigation, not that's already pre-existing, that's on title,
Mhm.
but litigation that could come is when people want to approach someone like myself to do hard money, and either the owner or a beneficiary, someone of bloodline or of step line, like a stepson, stepdaughter,
Mhm.
lives in the property, but does not have the ability, cannot show the ability to repay. And
Mhm.
ever since the Dodd-Frank law of 2010 came into existence, one of the biggest things that it brought was ATR, ability to repay. The minute that you have a borrower who lives in a property that's a subject property to be borrowed against, you have to prove their ability to repay the loan. And you have to structure it certain ways, at least a 5-year term, and prove that even under the worst circumstances, they can make the payment. Hard money lenders don't want to do that. They just want to do transactions and collect their interest payments.
Mhm.
Having to do, 60-page disclosures when all they normally have to do is 10,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to do an owner occupied transaction when you could just do another transaction that's tenant occupied or vacant,
Mhm.
great location. Those are the type of things that you want to look for that make certain transactions easier than others.
Gotcha. So in your experience, what are some common challenges or misconceptions that multifamily owners might have about hard money lending? So like the one that I can think of is the interest rate is higher, right? But is that essentially like the only kind of hurdle, or are there other things that you think owners might be worried about that they don't necessarily need to be worried about?
Sure. It's probably best to, maybe give a story and give an example.
Mhm.
Case in point, many times I work with the estates of individuals who have passed away or they've gone into some state of dementia. Uh, I have worked with a borrower through some trust and estates attorneys where there was a property over on the west side near the West Side Pavilion. Great location. All 2 bedrooms. Property's worth about $4 million on a bad day. They only owe $500,000. So $500,000 divided by $4 million, that's only a 12.5% LTV. Like I said, all 2 bedrooms, $4 million of value, only owes 500,000. That's a no-brainer. West Side, all twos, that much value. That is 87.5% equity. That is definitely something that they don't want to lose. So, the first things check out, the real estate. But my underlying borrower is in dementia. So she's forgetting that the stack of papers on her desk are bills of present day mortgage payments that need to be made. She's missed 5.
Oh.
So they've already put her in a default, and it takes a niece who's a real estate attorney to come in, look on the desk and see, Auntie, what's going on. And Auntie has no clue that she's in default. I am brought in. There was potential litigation because a stepchild who thought he was the trustee and this rock star attorney niece who truly is the trustee started to fight over who has the rights. And then they continued to fight. And it was going to go into litigation until they realized you all are 121 days from foreclosure.
Oh, man.
They said, we'll hold off a truce. They put their arms down and they said, Preston, go ahead, get the loan in place. Now, to answer your question directly, one, the structure. Once my investors had seen the property, walked through the property, had got a chance to get comfortable with the property, they loved the neighborhood. They knew it. Actually, their house of worship was right around the corner. So they knew that area well. They knew that there was something to lose. So, and they liked that since this woman was in dementia, she had to have a conservator, a professional conservator placed over her. And they actually knew the conservator, the licensed professional fiduciary, who was going to be paying their bill.
Okay.
They knew this person personally.
Yeah.
So at the time in the market when home mortgages were about 2.5%, hard money went down as well. That loan got done, I think, at 6.75%.
Wow.
Fixed for 3 years and no prepayment penalty after 6 months, or after whether you pay 6 payments up front or wait and just make your 6 payments every 30 days.
Okay.
Free to go after the 6th period. So people think when you say hard money, 15%, 10 points, 5-year prepayment penalty, stuck in the loan for 5 years, no matter what you do. It's not that.
Right.
Competitive pressures in the marketplace have gotten hard money down to the point where it's longer term, less prepayment penalties, and more flexibility with regards to payment, and obviously a lower rate. So there have been cases where I've done hard money at 5.75.
Oh, wow.
Fixed for 30 years. It had gotten to the point where even the Swiss banks were interested in investing in hard money loans right here in Los Angeles. So go figure. Everybody wants in the game.
Yeah. So for somebody who's potentially thinking about it, it really makes sense for them to not be sidelined by those misconceptions and actually reach out to you and kind of go over their scenario, right? Yeah.
Sure. And then something else I'll post with regards to apartments, like I said, best of the best. They want best of the best in many cases, like Fannie Freddie, or maybe if you're doing a construction loan, FHA, they want occupancy of 90% or greater for 90 days. Some of them like to see 2 to 3 years of operating financials. They want to see 2 to 3 years of tax returns from the borrower. And some of them are even, depending on the institution, they want a personal guarantee from the borrower. Once hard money identifies or structures it so that there's something to lose, PGs go away. They're not worried about financials. And occupancy 90 for 90. They don't care. Give it to me if it's vacant. I'll fill the building up myself. So, a lot of times people who do multifamily will use hard money when they want to add an ADU, when they're in between there, when the property's in transition, maybe they have totally purged the building of all tenants. They want to redo the rent roll, do some tenant improvements, and occupancy is very low, if not zero. Hard money makes perfect sense. You could pull some money out of the property, do your tenant improvements, granite countertops, recessed lighting, travertine tile to get the best rents. And
Right.
then once the property is in perfect position, and you can lease it up 90 over 90, you got your ADUs done, you got your permits from the city, final sign-offs. At that point, best of the best is, knocking at your door.
Right. Yeah, and I just, I see this myself in the market, the increased interest in adding ADUs to multifamily properties. And I
Mhm.
just read an article about it too, because it makes sense. It's a great way to increase the income and the value of the property. And you already have tenants, so you're just adding more tenants to a already leased property.
Mhm.
Nice. You've talked a lot about some of your success stories, but I'm wondering if you have any other ones that kind of stand out to you where it's like this in this scenario, the hard money loan really came in and saved the day and how it worked out.
Well, definitely there was that Santa Monica incident.
Mhm.
You would be surprised, even when people have low balances. And it is usually with regards to the investment properties where the person doesn't live there. I will say that with regards to hard money, because hard money usually deals with investment properties only, because they
Mhm.
don't deal with having to verify income.
Mhm.
It's easy to forget what's going on at a property if all you're doing is collecting the rent. Um, I had a client, have a client who has multiple units, but he lives all the way out in the far edges of the Inland Empire, so he can't get in to see his property. He didn't see that the city was posting REAP notices on his property, and he moved without updating his address with
Oh
the
no.
city. So you, as a multifamily expert, know REAP, you're not responding to notices, it's a nightmare. So needless to say, lots of people wouldn't touch his deal. But sometimes the people that can see the underlying value, they'll come in, especially when his LTV was only going to be 20%.
Mhm.
So the risk, he had way more to lose than the investor that was putting up money, way more to lose. Because once we looked into what the REAP notice wanted to
Mhm.
fix, remediate, and remove it off of
Yeah.
his record, it was totally doable. But for him, it was freaking him out because the city they have posted multiple notices,
Mhm.
and his old address, when they finally got the mail, he was receiving multiple notices. So those are the cases where, and they were ready to, apply maximum consequences to him. So he
Yeah.
needed some money to fix the issues, and
Right.
we were able to come in before they came in and put down the hammer.
Okay. Well, good. That's a scary story, certainly.
It is.
Um, so what advice do you have for multifamily property owners who are considering getting a hard money loan?
We're working on rebranding. First thing. And what I mean by that is this: you'll hear less hard money, and now you're hearing more private money. You're hearing that. I know people are hearing that, but private money lending,
Mhm.
private lending.
Yeah.
They trying, even though we all know what that means, hard money. That moniker just looks like, Guido who's ready to break your legs if you don't pay up by Friday at 5 p.m. It just,
Yeah.
it just seems harsh. It sounds harsh. So that's one of the things. Hard money is not as hard as it seems as long as you do what you're supposed to do.
Mhm.
The underlying investors, you know, the investors who I work with, the debt funds who I work with, the majority of the people are pensioners who just want to get a good return on their investment. My average investor is about 68. put in a 30, 40-year career, and they just want some autopilot income.
Mhm.
They're not vultures. The majority of hard money investors, private money investors, are grandmas and grandpas who had some extra cash lying around and don't want to just let it sit there, and they want to make some extra coupon.
Right.
They don't want trouble.
Mhm.
They don't want trouble. You don't want trouble. If you pay your mortgage on time, they don't want to get they don't want to get notices that property taxes haven't been paid. They don't want to get notices that the insurance bill hasn't been paid, or you get non-cancel, non-renewables because the property, the insurance is being canceled because you've been found to be non-renewable. As long as borrowers aren't having their investors get notices like that in the mail, they work with them. They work with them. They love doing transactions where they can make 9, 10, 11 to 12%.
Yeah.
And they don't want to make 0.5% from a CD. I know CDs are higher now, but you get the point. You can
Right.
make twice as much money, investing on some vacant property in Pack Palisades at 10%. Why not?
Mhm. Right. Right. I always hear you talk about like when to think of you. And it's like death, divorce, dementia. And is there one more?
Distress.
Distress. Okay, so just to recap for the listeners, these are instances where they might not typically be thinking, oh, private
Mhm.
lending is an option. These are the scenarios. So just say them again one time real quick.
Sure. Deceased. In this state, it's most likely to happen that patriarchs of families pass away, and the relatives left behind want to continue to own the property. And there is an opportunity to preserve grandma, grandpa, mom, or dad's 1940s, 1950s, 1960s tax basis. A hard money loan is an option because we don't transfer the property out of the state of the decedent when the loan is made. Dementia, as I've mentioned, there are cases where owners of property have lost their cognitive ability to know what's going on. So we make loans like that because incapacity, lots of times people don't want to deal with the potential for litigation due to incapacity, an elder being taken advantage of while they're in an incapacitated state. Distress, things happen
Mhm.
that put people in precarious positions, and you just want to have an option to get them out of that distress that allows them to restructure things, breathe. Probably the most important thing, allows them to breathe. We can structure a transaction where they make 6 months worth of payments up front. So, going through a distress situation where you might lose your property, it's hair raising. Sometimes after they come out of that, they're really beat up.
Mhm.
So we can structure a transaction where they can breathe for a while, or if it's, deceased and distress, where you've lost a relative and it's like a reverse mortgage.
Mhm.
Once the relative passes away, the reverse mortgage now becomes due. That's stressful.
Right.
And if the executor is the beloved son who loved his mother and they're still mourning the loss of their parent, and they got to take care of this reverse mortgage, which is a ticking time bomb,
Mhm.
sometimes private money
Right.
comes in, pays off that reverse mortgage. The reverse mortgage lender is now out of the way, and then they can breathe.
Mhm.
If it's structured right, they can grieve, and then they can get back to taking care of administrative business once they've had a chance to just really get their heads back together. And then, sometimes divorce. It's interesting how divorce can wreck someone's credit. Uh, because if they're really fighting and they want to be vindictive, they'll charge up credit cards, not pay credit cards, and then the innocent spouse is left with horrible credit,
Mhm.
but they've got the property. They can't refinance through the normal way because their credit is so messed up,
Mhm.
but they still need to pay off that spouse that may have done some nefarious activities, but still they need to be paid out their share because they have a half that they deserve to be monetized on. So those are definitely quick scenarios of what the 4 Ds are. deceased, dementia, distress, and many times divorce.
Excellent. Well, Preston, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge about private money. What's the best way for someone to reach out to you if they're interested in learning more about this and maybe talking to you about getting a loan?
Well, there's the old school way. Telephone 626-644-6813. There is the digital experience, Howard, P like Papa, R like Romeo, at Rose, as in the flower, City as in you live, as in where you live, Realty as in our industry, Inc.com. And then also I can be found on the World Wide Web, or company information can be found on the World Wide Web at a pretty similar address to the email address I just gave you, www.rosecityrealtyinc.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Preston.
No, thank you, Karen. It's a pleasure to be with you.